Roll for Crit here with a Kickstarter preview for the newest in the Valeria line from Daily Magic Games, Margraves of Valeria. What's a Margrave, you ask? Why, that's an old-fashioned term for a commander, a defender, a military leader defending a kingdom, or any kind of an empire. And that's the case in this game. Players are commanding units and knights and have different cards with various people with different roles and trying to get the most points by building and collecting different symbols and just defending their territory better than anybody else can do it.
Yes, this game is all about you are actually on the board, your little generals here, the Margraves, and your goal really is to influence the 4 main guilds, which are on there, which you might recognize symbols before if you've played any Valeria games, and by defeating monsters, building these special ward towers, and other little ways to get more points. So when the game starts, there's actually a little drafting mechanic in the beginning where you draft these starting resource cards, where so everyone will get possibly different resources. Then, throughout the rest of the game, it's pretty simple. It's simply taking these cards you hand. Right now, there are a mixture of starter citizens because we just set up mid-game. And you will discard them for one of the following effects. You can either take one of the 2 effects on the cards. Now, they have a little banner up here. This is what you call the pennant effect, and you go from top to bottom. They're much more simple than the text on there. It's like gain a resource, move your character, or move a knight, or play a knight if you have one in your supply. The other, I should actually just leave them out, is the text there. Now, those are a bit more advanced, and they'll usually gain a bunch of resources, or maybe do something like move your character anywhere, as well as a bunch have things that involve all the players. For example, this one says all players may pay a gold to get a resource of their choice. Now, the trick here is that, unlike many other games, the resources are actually limited by number of player. So sometimes you may want to be careful to do that because you can actually make sure you get the last of a resource that everyone wants. So you'll have to keep an eye out on that.
If there's not an ability in your hand that you really want to use at that time on your turn, or maybe for a number of other reasons, you can spend a card and not activate anything that's on it to build a ward tower in the location that you're in. That costs 1 of each resource type plus 1 of these babies, which comes from over here. They're a little harder to get. And you would place it in one of these spaces, which are also first come, first serve. Each one you place gets you a different reward. They also give you 3 points for one of the guilds, or you could split those points up however you want. And depending on how much influence you have in these guilds at the end of the game, you're going to be able to get more points. Another thing you can do is the recall action. So if you don't have any cards left in your hand, or if you just want to get some back from your discard pile, you would spend the last one potentially, or not, from your hand, discard it. Then you get to take everything from your hand back. You have to get rid of one of the people here from this lineup, so nobody can get them. Then you have the option of purchasing a brand new one. Each card is going to cost whatever the printed cost is underneath it, and then once you choose to take one, or if you don't, either way, if there's an empty space, they move down and new cards come out to fill the lineup up again.
We touched on it, but building the tower gives the influence, and that's really the thing you're going to keep track of. Because like a lot of other Valeria games, it's all about getting a lot of the same sets, with the buildings being similar, with the rogue, like knight, I think it's support and like religious. And depending on how far you're on the track, on the end of the game, you're going to multiply the number of symbols you have times where this is. So yellow gets 5 points for every one of the religious holy symbols they have, which is pretty good. And most of them will come from cards, but they also come from these buildings. For example, all 3 of these players get 2 additional helmet symbols, which really shows how these towers are going to put you ahead of the rest. But there's other ways you can get that, and actually these little tiles down here. There's many ways to get them. One of them is starting resources. Every time you cross these lines, which you do have to pay gold for, to actually cross ahead, so it's not simply just gaining influence, you'll get a chance to get some of these bomb symbols. Some of them are end game, like you have 2 there that just give those symbols.
Right.
There's a set collecting aspect thing here, which gives more points the more of the sets. But some of them, like this one, have a scroll. You can hold on, and any time on your turn, you can discard for those resources, meaning you can have people might think you don't have enough resources or something, but then discard that, and all of a sudden you have a lot more to do on your turn. We talked a little bit about these generals moving around, and the reason why that's important is that, one, when you move to a location with either a knight, which are sort of neutral units, but on your turn if you move them, or your own character, each location has a unique feature. A bunch of them you can sort of guess if they're near a resource pile or getting that resource. Some of them, though, are maybe getting gold, hiring up here, or this ship track, which you can discard resources, and for each one you do, you move along the track and get rewards. They're pretty good if you can spend a lot of resources there. And of course, there's also the big thing about combat.
Combat is the other big action you're probably going to be taking using your cards. As you can see, there are a few different piles of different monsters from different lands. They all have a strength number over here. You need to meet that strength number to destroy them. That's going to come from your strength meter up here, so various things throughout the game will let you raise this, and to use your strength you would spend it, so it would actually go down. Or if there are any knights in the vicinity, you can use one of those instead. If you use them, you actually put them over here on this little table.
The mausoleum.
That's right. And this is really important and valuable because if you manage to fill up any row or column, you will get the printed reward from there. So you can strategically use that to get even more benefits in addition to fighting and getting the rewards, which are printed down here, and more influence to spend on the track in any way you want.
It turns out people like you when you kill the scary things around the town.
Yeah, it is really good. So the game ends either when someone has placed all 4 of their towers, or if this deck can't be drawn from.
Right. If you need to refill the line, you can't refill. Same thing with the 2 at the bottom.
Right.
So once that is done, you make sure everyone has an equal amount of turns. It's much more of a territory control game before the others. It still has the set collection, I think, that a lot of the other Valeria card games have. But this is the first time where you're thinking more about board movement and placement. And the resources being limited seemed much more. It seemed to be something I was keeping much more compared to the other games in the series.
Yeah, well, it really is. I think it is really the first Valeria game that is a proper board game. I think all the other ones you can call card games, and even I think that's the first one since Card Kingdoms, the original, that is a bigger experience. You know, they have a lot of the ones that come in just a smaller box. You know, this is a big game with more depth, and there's a lot of different options and possible play styles. You know, all the things that we said of how to get points. You could go mostly combat. You could try to build your towers quickly. You could really focus on getting all the influence and symbols that you want. Going for citizens, really trying to collect these different sets to get points that way. There's a lot of different ways you can do it.
And not only that, keeping an eye on other players. For example, you may notice that if someone's ahead in building towers, maybe you'll try to get these gems, but not build with them, sort of to hoard them to stop them from building any towers.
Yeah, this is something else we didn't mention. You actually do have inventory space.
That's true.
So, I mean, at the start of the game, you have 4 towers that are taken up for those slots. So you're also thinking about how much space you have there. Like you said, how many resources you can afford to take, or how many you can afford not to let other people take. And there's no direct player interaction in the sense that you're not attacking other players. But there are little things here and there where maybe, like we said, you could take one of these spots before someone else can, or maybe you move a knight away when someone else is trying to use it, for instance. So there's some subtle things you can do, but it's not too aggressive of a game. That pretty much sums it up. If you like the other Valeria games, this obviously uses the same artwork, which we still really like, or at least the same style of artwork, you know. Not all of these components are final. Of course, this is not the final board,
yes.
So some of the stuff will be looking different in the final version, but it does keep definitely that same flavor, the same spirit. But I think, like I said, now with the addition of the actual board, there's a little more to think about, a little more going on in terms of what you're looking at.
Let us know what you think of this, if you're interested in backing it or not, or if you're a fan of anything else from the Valeria Kingdom series. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, talk to us in the comment section down below, and also in the description you'll find a link to the Kickstarter so you can see it for yourself and decide what you like. My name is Jonathan.
And my name's Will.
And this has been a Roll for Crit preview.
Here's an idea. Support our Patreon or like and subscribe to this channel for more.
Fagulu Miktawa audio expansion Wakana Cthulhu awesome.